I am your host, Nero Wolfe, and tonight we unveil a new chapter of crime, intrigue, and suspense.
Chapter 1. The empty front seat Broadway runs on sweat, light, and lies that pay weekly. If you want to see a man sweat honestly, catch him 5 minutes after the curtain drops when applause has stopped being a roar and turned into arithmetic. If you want to see him lie, catch him 10 minutes later, when he has found his coat and his courage and is certain the city will swallow whatever he feeds it. It was a Wednesday, and the rain had the streets in a shiny grip, making every cab look like it had been dipped in black enamel. When I got back to the brownstone on West 35th, the front hall smelled of polished wood, boiled coffee, and the faint clean sting from upstairs that meant Theodore had been fussing with Wolfe's orchids. Fritz met me at the door with his calm face and his efficient hands. "A gentleman is in the office," he said. "Gentleman," I repeated. On a Wednesday, that is either a compliment or a warning. "It is both," Fritz said, and took my hat with a look that suggested he disapproved of rain as a concept. In the office, Nero Wolfe sat behind his desk, rooted as if the chair had grown around him. The client was in the red leather chair and looked like he had been placed there by a stage manager who wanted the lighting just so. He rose when I entered, quick and practiced, a motion meant for 1,000 eyes instead of 2. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, and the voice was familiar. I had heard it through a proscenium, heroic and wounded on schedule. Up close, it had a rasp in it that did not belong to acting. Wolfe introduced him. "Archie, Mr. Leo Ransom." Ransom's face could have sold tickets, but his eyes were not selling anything. They were buying certainty and finding none. Wolfe said, "Mr. Ransom has come with a problem. He claims it does not make sense." I said, "It does not." Ransom snapped, then tried to sandpaper the edge off. "Not that it is magic." Wolfe's mouth moved slightly, his version of a smile when he thinks a man is dramatizing. "Proceed." Ransom's hands gripped the chair arms. "Last night after the preview, I left around 11. The stage door was crowded. I signed what I could, smiled at what I could not, and went to the curb. I took a cab." "A standard beginning," I murmured, "because I like a standard beginning. It lets you notice when the middle goes wrong." "It was a normal cab," he said. "Yellow, ordinary. I opened the rear door, got in, and gave my address. West End Avenue near 72nd. I heard the driver say, 'Sure.' The cab pulled away. Wolfe's eyes held him. "You heard him?" "Yes. I saw the partition glass. I saw the outline of a cap. I did not study him, because I do not usually study cab drivers. We went north. Rain, lights, the meter ticking. Then around 65th I looked up through the partition. He swallowed. There was no one in the front seat." That landed in the room like a brick in a quiet pond. Wolfe did not blink. "You are saying the vehicle moved without a driver?" "I am saying the front seat was empty. The wheel was turning. The cab stayed in its lane. It stopped at lights, it obeyed. But there was nobody there. I could not resist. Perhaps the driver was extremely modest and hid behind the steering wheel." Ransom's glare tried to be a slap. It missed and became fatigue. I leaned forward. The latch was locked. I knocked. No answer. I looked harder. No head, no shoulders, no hands. Empty. "And what did you do?" Wolfe asked. "I told the cab to stop," Ransom said. "I spoke to it because there was nothing else to speak to. At 72nd it pulled to the curb and stopped. I got out, looked through the windshield, and opened the driver's door. Empty. The engine was running. The hood was warm. Then it rolled forward a foot, like a dog tugging a leash. The door swung shut, and it drove away. Empty. The rain tapped the window. Upstairs, far away, the greenhouse lights hummed softly, like a private sun. "This is your entire problem," Wolfe said. "No," Ransom replied. "This morning there was a note." He handed an envelope to me. Heavy paper, good taste under stress. I opened it and read the typed sheet aloud. "You did well not to shout. You did well not to run. Next time you will do as you are told tonight. After the show, take the cab. Do not speak, do not look, do not disobey. That was all, Ransom said. It was under my door. Someone got past the doorman, or the doorman helped. Wolfe's fingers steepled. You have enemies. Every own has enemies, Ransom said, then forced calm into his voice. Yes, I have had ugly letters. A bottle once. But this is different. It is intelligent. It feels like someone rehearsing me. Wolfe's eyes narrowed, as if appreciating the word while distrusting the man. I do not deal in ghosts. I deal in human beings who are often more grotesque than any phantom. Why you? Ransom opened his hands helplessly. I do not know, I said. Someone wants you to be somewhere, or to deliver something, or to be seen doing something you do not want to do. Wolfe looked at the note as if it were an insect to be pinned. Obedience. Fear makes a man careless, an actor, perhaps. More so. Ransom's face tightened. I did not come here to be insulted. You came here to be helped, Wolfe said. Insults are incidental. There is a retainer. Wolfe named it. Ransom did not flinch, which told me he was either rich or truly frightened, and I had already guessed one of those. I will have it delivered, he said. Good. Now, Wolfe continued, you will give names. Your producer, director, agent, leading lady, those who profit from you, and those who resent you. Ransom started with the professional list, and then slowed at the personal, like a man approaching a trapdoor he had built himself. Wolfe's eyes flickered. The financier. Yes, he is the money behind the show, and the voice behind my phone at all hours. Director, Silas Vane. Leading lady, Marjorie Dax. And Wolfe said, patient and relentless, the woman you are not naming. Ransom's jaw worked. Lila Brand chorus. Klein keeps her around. Keeps her around, Wolfe repeated. She came to me last week, Ransom said, and the words dragged like wet cloth. She said she wanted out. She said Klein promised her things and threatened her when she asked for them. She asked me to talk to him. I refused. I told her to go to the police. And she did not, Wolfe said. Number, she cried. I walked away. I am not her savior. Wolfe's mouth tightened. You are not a sentimental man. I am an actor, Ransom said bitterly. My sentiment is rented by the week. Wolfe dismissed him with a nod and a glance at me. Archie will attend tonight. You will obey my instructions, not the note's good day. After Fritz closed the door behind him, I said, all right, I go to the theater and get soaked in perfume and ambition. Any special requests besides the license number and the invisible driver? Wolfe tapped the note. Typing has habits, spacing, alignment. The machine. Obtain samples from those near him. So, I will ask the producer for a threatening memo and the chorus girl for a tragic confession, I said. Wolfe's gaze chilled. Do not be frivolous. I am never frivolous, I told him. I am resilient. I called Saul Panzer, because when Wolfe sits, the rest of us move. Saul agreed to attend, which means he also agreed to suffer, because theater crowds are not kind to men who notice things. By 7, I was in a cab of my own, heading uptown. New York in the rain looks like it has been freshly minted and immediately spent. The sidewalks shine, the gutters gurgle, and faces hurry past with collars up. Each person convinced the weather has singled them out. The theater was one of those Broadway houses that smell of velvet, dust, and the ghosts of 1,000 bad jokes. Backstage smelled better, which is not saying much. I showed a card, said a few names, and ended up in a corridor where posters with Ransom's face watched you, like a polite threat. A man in a suit intercepted me, thin, sharp, with hair so neat it looked angry about it. Archie Goodwin, he said. Not a question. Silas Vane, director, I said. I expected more scarf. His mouth did not smile. We do not wear costumes off stage. Why are you here? Social call, I said. I hear the leading man is seeing ghosts. His eyes hardened a fraction. Leo sees himself, mostly. That is his gift and his disease. That sounds like affection, I said. That sounds like truth, he replied. If you are here to create trouble, do it after closing. I have a show to run. He moved off, brisk and offended by my existence. In the wings I found Barton Klein. He was broad in the shoulders and narrow in the conscience, with a face that had learned to look benevolent for investors. He spotted me and approached with a smile that suggested he thought he owned the floorboards. "Goodwin," he said. "Wolfe's man, how charming." "Are you a theatre lover?" "I love anything that has an ending," I said. "Especially when the ending makes sense." His smile stayed up, but his eyes did not join it. Leo called Wolfe. Over a nervous spell, I told him not to. Wolfe has a reputation for making private matters public. Wolfe's reputation, I said, is for making lies uncomfortable. Klein leaned closer. "Listen, the boy is under strain. The show is a success, yes. But success is a weight. He is imaginative. He sees patterns where there are none." His eyelids flickered. "Absurd. Broadway thrives on absurd," I said. "If you have a typed note collection, I would love to browse." He gave me a look that could have bought and sold me in a smaller office. "If Wolfe wants something from me, he can ask. Leo should focus on his work. That is what I pay him for." "And what else?" I asked softly. Klein's smile went thin. "That is all. I let him go because a man like that does not confess, he negotiates. Wolfe could negotiate later with facts. I found Lila Brand only by accident, which is the way you find most trouble. She was in a narrow passage near the dressing rooms, hugging a coat around her as if she could hide inside it, pretty in the way a tired girl can be pretty. Eyes too large, mouth too tight. When she saw me, she flinched. "You are with Mr. Wolfe," she said. "I am with myself," I told her. "Mr. Wolfe is with his chair." Her lips twitched, almost a smile. Then it vanished. "Leo told you." "He told me you exist," I said. "That is a start. He also told me you were frightened." Her fingers clenched on the coat. "Everyone is frightened. That is what the theatre teaches. You smile, and sing and dance, and inside you are counting the ways you can fall." "Are you being threatened?" I asked. She looked down. "I should not talk." "That is a popular policy," I said. "It is also how people get cornered." Her eyes lifted to mine, wet and defiant. "Mr. Klein owns this show. He owns my contract. He owns my time. He thinks that means he owns me." "And Leo would not help," I said. Pain flashed. "Leo helps himself. He tells himself he is above it. He tells himself he is clean. If someone is sending him notes," I said, "they are trying to make him dirty." Her breath caught. "Notes. You have not seen one." She shook her head quickly. "Number, but I have seen men like that. They do not stop. They only change tactics." Before I could press her, a stagehand called her name, and she pulled away like a rabbit, leaving me with nothing but the smell of cheap powder and fear. The show went on. From the back of the house I watched. Ransom do what he was paid to do, which was to be brave on cue. He was good. I will grant him that. The audience leaned forward when he spoke, and they laughed when he wanted them to. They had no idea he was also rehearsing terror. At 10:45 the curtain fell. Applause rose, then dwindled. I went to the stage door and waited in the wet crowd while Sol Panzer appeared beside me like a neat shadow. "You look miserable," Sol said. "I am blending," I replied. Ransom came out with his coat collar up, and his eyes scanning the street as if he expected the buildings to move. He saw me and his shoulders lowered an inch. "Good," he said. "You are here. Wolfe rarely sends me out for fresh air," I told him. "Now, tell me the instructions again." He swallowed. The note said, "Take the cab, do not speak, do not look." "I will speak," I said, "and I will look. That is my job." We stepped to the curb. A cab rolled up at once, too neat a response, like a cue answered by a prompt. Yellow, ordinary rain streaking the windows. The dome light flicked on. The driver's silhouette was there for an instant, a cap shape, shoulders. Then the silhouette dipped, and my stomach tightened. Ransom froze. That is it. I moved fast, because hesitation is how you get directed. I yanked open the rear door and shoved my head in. The back seat was empty, smelling of damp upholstery and stale cigarettes. The partition glass was up. I leaned forward and peered through it. The front seat looked empty, The steering wheel was centered. The engine idled. The wipers swished. And the driver's seat had a dark blanket or coat draped over it in a way that could disguise a crouched figure. If the figure was small and determined, I looked at the dashboard. A metal lever near the column, not standard. A wire tucked under the edge, not a ghost, not a miracle, a trick. And a careful one, Saul murmured behind me. Archie. Yeah, I said. I see it. Ransom's voice was a whisper. Do we get in? I straightened and looked at him. His face was pale under the streetlight, and the rain made his hair shine like a costume. We get in, I said, but we do it my way. I slid in first and left the door open a crack. Saul stayed outside, angled so he could see the front and the rear at once. Ransom hesitated, then climbed in beside me. The door shut. The lock clicked like a decision. The cab pulled away from the curb, smooth as a professional lie. Ransom's breath came fast. There is no one, he said. There is someone. I told him quietly. Or there is something operated by someone. And whoever it is, they are close enough to touch us. The cab rolled through wet lights toward the dark mouth of the avenue, and I felt the city around us watching without caring. The meter ticked, the wipers whispered. The partition glass reflected our faces back at us, pale and trapped. Then, from the front, there came a soft thud like a bag shifting, and I knew with a cold certainty that did not need rehearsal that this was no longer just a trick to frighten a leading man. It was a delivery. Whatever was in the front of that cab had weight, and it was waiting for Wolfe's office to make sense of it. Chapter 2. Archie rides the ghost cab. A cab is a small private room on wheels, and New York rents them by the minute to anyone who can stand the smell of damp cloth and other people's decisions. That night, Leo Ransom and I were renting one that had decided to be interesting. We had pulled away from the curb like any other pair of citizens fleeing a theater, except the citizens were a leading man with his nerves exposed, and an assistant to an armchair genius with his curiosity doing push-ups. The rain made the streetlights smear into long wet streaks, and the wipers kept time like a metronome. Ransom sat stiff beside me, trying to obey the note by sheer willpower. Do not speak, do not look. It was a nice idea if you were a statue, I said. If you faint, do it quietly. Wolfe hates noise. He made a sound that was half a laugh and half a swallow. You are not taking this seriously. I am taking it seriously, I told him. I am just refusing to take it politely. The meter clicked on with a little jerk, as if the cab had been waiting for us and was pleased we had finally played our parts. The dome light went out. The partition glass stayed up, a shiny barrier reflecting our faces back at us. In the front, the driver's seat looked empty in a way that dared you to believe it. I did not. I slid my right hand along the edge of the seat, cushioned slow, like a man petting a dog that might bite. Under the vinyl there was something that did not belong. A ridge, hard and straight, running forward. Ransom's eyes widened. What? Your ghost has bones, I said. I leaned forward, not so far that I looked like I was about to audition for suicide, but far enough to peer through the partition at the base of the driver's seat. There was a dark drape over the lower part, like a coat tossed there carelessly. Careless is a word that does not apply to machines that stop at red lights. The cab turned smoothly at 79th and headed west. The wheel moved. The engine answered. The city slid by outside, wet and indifferent. Whoever had put this together had learned the trick of being ordinary, which is the hardest trick of all. The soft thud came again from the front. Not a bump from the street, a movement. Something shifting its weight. Ransom whispered, "That is someone." Or something, I said. Either way, it is not the Holy Spirit. I slid my hand farther under the seat. My fingers found a metal rod, cold and greasy. It ran toward the dash. There was a latch near the center console, hidden under a flap of worn upholstery. It was crude work, the kind of job a mechanic might do in a hurry, or a clever amateur who had learned from diagrams and stubbornness. The cab stopped at a light perfectly. Too perfectly. I looked out the side window. A woman under an umbrella hurried past, face pinched. The sort of face New York assigns to strangers, so it will not have to remember them. She did not glance at us. No one did. You can be kidnapped in plain sight if you do it without drama. I tested the door handle. It opened. Good. Whoever wanted obedience was relying on fear, not locks. I leaned closer to Ransom. Listen, this is built. It is not supernatural. Someone wants you scared and compliant. The question is why. He swallowed. The note said, do not look. So we look harder, I said. The cab moved again. It turned onto a quieter street, and I knew we were no longer on the path to his apartment. That tightened something in my chest that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with annoyance. I do not mind being threatened. I mind being directed. I reached down and pulled my penknife from my pocket. I flicked it open. The blade was small, but it had punctured bigger egos than this cab's. Ransom saw it and went paler. What are you doing? Taking my own notes, I said. I slid the tip of the blade under the edge of the seat cushion and lifted. The vinyl gave a little, and beneath it was a narrow channel cut into the foam. The rod ran in that channel, forward under the partition. A second rod branched off toward the brake pedal area, and a wire looped beside it, taped, sloppy, a mechanical spine, a puppet frame. Enough to tug a wheel, nudge a pedal, steer a cab in small controlled doses if you had rehearsed the route. It would not drive cross-country, but it could haunt an actor from a theater to a nearby curb with a convincing show of independence. Ransom stared. How? Somebody with time, I said, and a garage. The cab turned again and slowed. I saw a blank brick building, a roll-up door half open, and a sign over it that read, in peeling letters, Hollis Auto. Not a grand name, but grand is seldom necessary for crime. The cab rolled inside like it belonged there. That was my cue to stop being a passenger. I shoved the door open and stepped out into the shelter of the garage. The air smelled of oil, rubber, and old heat. A single overhead light buzzed tools, hung on a wall like metal teeth. The cab's engine kept running. Ransom stumbled out after me, looking around as if expecting a chorus line of ghosts. Where are we? Somewhere I would not bring Wolfe, I said. He would complain about the lighting. A figure moved in the shadows near the back. A man in coveralls, broad shoulders, cap low. He had the stance of someone who believed in leverage. He said, "You were not supposed to get out." His voice was ordinary. That was the first honest thing about the night. I smiled. I am hard to direct. He took a step forward. In his hand was a wrench, heavy and persuasive. Back in the cab. Ransom's breath hitched. He looked like he was about to obey, which was exactly what the note counted on. I said, "Before you swing that, think about this. You built a toy and taught it to roll. That is clever. But you did not count on me. That is careless." He hesitated, and in that half-second I looked at the cab again, not the empty front seat, but the floor. A wire ran from under the dash to the driver's footwell, a battery pack, improvised. A lever bolted near the steering column. The crude parts did not match the patience of the scheme. It was as if someone clever had designed it and someone less clever had assembled it in a hurry. The man saw my eyes and shifted to block the view. That told me I was looking at the right thing. Saul Panzer appeared at the garage opening like a neat sentence at the end of a messy paragraph. He stood in the rain shadow, hat brim low, hands in his coat pockets. To anyone else he looked like a man waiting for a cab. To me he looked like relief. He said, "Evening." The man with the wrench jerked his head. "Who are you?" "A customer," Saul said calmly. "I came to complain about unusual driving." I said, "Saul, call Inspector Kramer." Saul's eyes flicked. "Quick." "Already did. Archie, he is enthusiastic." The man's face tightened. He raised the wrench slightly, not to strike yet, but to remind us he had options. I stepped between him and Ransom, because I am not heroic, but I am practical. If the leading man gets his skull rearranged, Wolfe has to work with a corpse, and the theater crowds get noisy, I said. Listen, you are not the brain of this. You are the hands who hired you. His jaw worked. Nobody hired me. That is a lie, I said, and it is a bad one. You built this thing, and you did not do it for the joy of engineering. You did it because someone paid, or threatened, or promised. He tightened his grip on the wrench. Get out. Ransom suddenly found his voice. Why me? The man's eyes slid to him, contempt and irritation. Because you were easy, because you listen, because you think you are important. That stung Ransom more than the threat. His shoulders stiffened, and for a moment he looked like he did on stage when someone insults his honor. I said, You have a name. The man's mouth twisted. Hank, last name, I said. He lifted the wrench an inch. Leave, Saul said gently. Hank, you have a cab in your garage that just committed a very specific sort of mischief. The police will not admire your creativity. They will admire your fingerprints. The word fingerprints did it. Hank's eyes flicked to the cab, to the rods, to the sloppy tape. He had built a trap and suddenly realized he had left his name on the spring. He turned as if to run. I moved first. I am not built like a wrestler, but I have learned that speed and surprise make up for a shortage of bulk. I lunged, caught his sleeve, and we went sideways into a stack of tires. The wrench clanged to the floor. Hank cursed and swung a fist that clipped my shoulder. Ransom did something brave for once off stage. He grabbed Hank's other arm and held on like a man afraid to let go of his own spine. Hank bucked, but he was fighting two angles now, and the tires helped. Saul stepped in, efficient, and produced a small revolver that made the air in the garage instantly respectful. He said, Ina. Hank froze. His breathing was loud in the oily air. I held him and said, Now we talk. He spat on the floor. Talk to the cops. We will, I said. But first, talk to me. Who designed this? Hank's eyes darted, and in that dart I saw it. Fear not of the gun, of someone else, he said. I just put it together. From instructions, I pressed. He swallowed. From a diagram. A diagram like a blueprint, I said. Typed note too, a man who likes machines and order. Hank's lips tightened. I do not know his name. Saul's voice stayed calm. You do, or you know enough to find it. Hank shook his head, stubborn and scared. He comes, he pays, he tells. That is it. I let go of him long enough to scoop the wrench away with my foot. Where does he come from? Hank's eyes flicked toward a small office at the back of the garage. The door was half shut, the kind of door that hides paperwork, I said. Good, we will look. Hank jerked. Number, that was not a request, I told him. I crossed to the office, pushed the door open, and found a desk, a chair, a coffee cup, with a ring of old bitterness at the bottom, and a cheap typewriter on a shelf. The ribbon was fresh. The keys were worn in a pattern that looked like habit. On the desk was a stack of paper, some blank, some with grease smudges, and one sheet with a rough sketch of a dashboard. Arrows drawn in pencil, measurements scrawled beside them, not elegant. Not the mind I was looking for. The mind I wanted had handed this man a plan and let him do the dirty work. I picked up the sketch, and my eyes caught on a small printed name in the corner of the paper, like a store stamp. Hollis Auto Supply. The garage was Hollis Auto. The paper came from Hollis Auto Supply. That might have meant nothing except that it was too neat. The kind of neat that tries to look casual. Behind me, Ransom said, Archie, there is something in the cab. I turned and went back. He was pointing at the front, at the floor under the driver's seat. The drape that had looked like a tossed coat had shifted. Beneath it, taped to the floorboard, was a small canvas bag, the kind used for tools or money. It was the weight we had heard. I crouched, tugged it loose, and opened it. Inside were cash bundles, neat and banded, and a small folded envelope, with Leo Ransom's name typed on it. Ransom's face went grey. That is mine. That is intended for you, I corrected, and you were intended to deliver it. To whom? He whispered. I looked at Saul. Saul looked at the garage door where the rain made a silver curtain. Wolfe, I said, is going to enjoy this. Saul nodded once. If he can enjoy anything without leaving his chair. We heard a siren in the distance, faint but approaching. Hank's shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of him like oil from a cracked pan. Ransom stared at the cash as if it might bite. What is this? A reason, I said. A reason to make you obey. A reason to make you look guilty later. A reason to make you do what you were told without asking why. I closed the bag and held it tight. Now we go home. Wolfe likes reasons. He also likes dinner. If we are late, Fritz will glare at me, and that is a threat I take seriously. Outside, New York kept shining with rain and pretending it had not seen a thing. We had a cab that could drive itself just enough to frighten an actor, a garage that could hide a scheme, a typewriter that had probably typed a very unfriendly note, and a bag of money meant to turn obedience into a crime. The joke was expensive, all right, and someone had paid for it. Chapter 3. The curtain call that never comes opening night on Broadway is not a date, it is a condition. It makes grown men pray to gods they do not believe in and makes women with steel in their spines check their lipstick as if color could control fate. It makes producers smile too wide and makes stagehands move like surgeons. It also makes money walk around on 2 feet, which is why trouble follows it like a dog that has learned the scent. The trouble followed us from Hollis Auto straight back to Wolfe's brownstone, and it did not even have the decency to wipe its shoes. By the time Saul and I delivered Leo Ransom to West 35th, it was after midnight. Fritz had been waiting with that quiet look of disapproval he reserves for late dinners and early lies. Wolfe was in the office, of course, because Wolfe is always in the office when a plan has begun to show its bones. I put the canvas bag on the desk. Our haunted taxi has pockets, I said. Wolfe's eyes went to the bag and stayed there like a cat considering a mouse that might be poisoned. Money, he said. Enough to make someone brave, I replied. Or enough to make someone obedient. There was also an envelope with Ransom's name on it. Wolfe's lips tightened. And the cab. In a garage on the west side, I said. Hollis Auto. A fellow named Hank assembled it, supposedly from a diagram delivered by a man who pays cash and prefers to remain a rumor. Hank is now in Inspector Kramer's arms. Figuratively speaking, Kramer arrived with enthusiasm and a vocabulary. Wolfe's glance flicked to Saul, Mr. Panzer. Saul nodded. The mechanical arrangement was crude but effective for short routes. Rods under the seat, latches near the console, improvised linkage into the steering column, the sort of device that would frighten a man who does not know machinery and keep him silent because he is ashamed of being frightened. Wolfe's eyes returned to me. And Mr. Ransom. He is in your red leather chair's waiting room, trembling politely, I said. He believes he has been drafted into something. He also believes you can undraft him. Wolfe made a small sound that might have been irritation. Bring him in. I did, and Leo Ransom walked into the office like a man who has forgotten his lines and suspects the audience can tell. His coat was damp. His eyes were raw, and the confidence he sells every night had been peeled back to the cheap wood. He saw the money bag and recoiled. That is the one. Wolfe studied him. You were meant to deliver this. Ransom's voice was hoarse. To whom? That, Wolfe said, is the question, Archie. The envelope. I handed Wolfe the typed envelope. He did not touch it. He read the name and then looked at Ransom with a mild contempt that was almost kind. Someone intended to place you in possession of a large sum of money. At night, by a method you would be reluctant to explain. That is a trap. Ransom's hands clenched. So they wanted me arrested. Or blackmailed, Wolfe replied. Or compelled. A man accused is a man obedient, I said. Kramer has Hank. The mechanic. We have the cab. We have the money. We have the note. We have a producer who thinks he owns the theater, and a chorus girl who thinks she is owned by him. Ransom flinched at the mention of the chorus girl, which told me that guilt, like fear, does heavy lifting. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. Tomorrow is opening night. Ransom's head jerked up. Yes, Wolfe's voice stayed even. You will not take any cab tomorrow. You will not leave the theatre alone. Archie will be present. Ransom shook his head. You do not understand. If I do not appear, the show collapses. Klein will kill me himself. Wolfe's eyes hardened. Mr. Klein may try. He will not succeed. Archie will be there. Now go home and sleep. You look as if you have been used as a prop. Ransom stared at him. Sleep. Wolfe's tone became colder. Yes, sleep. You are no use to me, hysterical. Fritz will make you coffee if you insist on being awake, but I suggest you obey me rather than anonymous typists. Ransom hesitated, then nodded, defeated by Wolfe's certainty. He left. When the door closed, Wolfe looked at me. Archie, tomorrow you will spend the day at the theatre. I will pack a lunch and a helmet, I said. Wolfe ignored that. You will observe Mr. Klein, Mr. Vane, Miss Dax, Miss Brand. Also the doorman at Mr. Ransom's building. Determine who has access, who has motive, and who is sufficiently ingenious to arrange this apparatus. And, I added, who has enough nerve to bet a Broadway star on a cheap machine. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Precisely. The next day the city woke up as if it had been paid to, which it has. The rain had moved on, leaving streets that steamed faintly and sidewalks that smelled of wet stone. I arrived at the theatre before noon, because opening night does not wait for a man who enjoys sleeping. The stage door guard recognized me, which was either good or bad. Familiarity is convenient, but it also makes you visible, and visibility is often where the knives begin. Backstage was a hive. Costumes hung like colorful corpses. Makeup cases were open, their lights humming like tiny interrogators. Everyone was talking too loudly, which is what people do when they are trying to convince themselves they are not afraid. Barton Klein was in the lobby with a clipboard and a smile that had been sharpened. He saw me and approached. Goodwin, he said. Still playing detective. Still playing producer, I returned. How does it feel to own a show? His smile thinned. I do not own it. I built it. Builders get crushed when the building collapses. I said, any idea why your leading man is being haunted? Klein's eyes flicked. Quick. Haunted. He says the cab drove itself. Klein laughed, too loudly. Actors invent drama when life is too quiet. Life is rarely quiet around money, I said. And there was money. His expression tightened a fraction. What money? I will let Wolfe explain that, I told him. He likes explaining. It makes him feel charitable. Klein's gaze held mine, cold now. Tell Wolfe to keep his charity away from my opening night. If he disrupts this show, I will make it very unpleasant for him. Wolfe lives for unpleasantness, I said. It keeps him indoors. I left him with that and went looking for Silas Vane. I found him in the wings, staring at the stage as if it had insulted him. He looked up when I approached, eyes narrow. You again, he said. I have a season pass, I told him. How is our leading man? Vane's mouth twisted. He is late. Late, I repeated. Opening night. That is brave. It is stupid. Vane snapped. He knows the schedule. He knows the cues. If he misses the first, we are dead. Have you seen him? I asked. No, Vane said, and his eyes shifted. He was here earlier. He went to his dressing room, then he vanished. I sent a man, no one answered. Empty, I said, like the cab. Vane's jaw tightened. Do not be clever, find him. That was a request. But it sounded like an order, and orders make me itch. Still, finding Leo Ransom seemed like a public service. I headed for the dressing rooms, weaving past chorus girls in robes, stage hands with coffee, and a man carrying a rack of shirts like a priest carrying vestments. I spotted Lila Brand near a corridor, her face too pale under the makeup, eyes darting like a trapped bird. When she saw me, she froze. You, she whispered. Me, I said. Have you seen Leo? She shook her head quickly. Number, I have not. I do not want trouble. Trouble has already bought a ticket, I told her. If you know something, this is the moment when silence stops being a virtue. Her lips trembled. Mr. Klein is furious, he said. If Leo does not show, he will ruin him. He said, he will make sure Leo never works again. That is a common Broadway promise, I said. Anything else? She hesitated, then leaned closer. Last night, someone slipped a note under my door, too. My stomach tightened. Typed. Yes, she whispered. It said, keep quiet and keep dancing. Did you keep it? I asked. She nodded, eyes wide. In my purse. Good, I said. Do not show it to anyone. Give it to me later. Right now, we find the star before the audience does. The corridor to Leo Ransom's dressing room smelled of powder and sweat and flowers that were already wilting. His door was closed. That was not unusual. A leading man likes privacy the way a banker likes interest. I knocked. No answer. I turned the knob. It was unlocked. The lights around the mirror were on, humming softly, steady and bright, as if they did not want to testify. The room was neat in the way a dressing room is never neat on opening night, unless someone has arranged it. Leo Ransom was there. He was sitting in front of the mirror, dressed in his first act costume, the collar set perfectly, the tie straight. His hands rested on his thighs as if he were waiting for a cue. His head was tilted slightly, like a thoughtful pose for a photograph. He was also dead. You can tell death by the stillness. Living stillness has a tension in it, a readiness. Dead stillness is final. It is the end of rehearsal. I stood there for a second, letting my eyes do what they have learned to do in Wolfe's service. Take in details without making a sound. There was no blood, no obvious wound, no weapon lying on the table like a confession. The mirror reflected his face, and the face looked composed, almost serene, except for the faint discoloration at the lips. His eyes were half open, staring at his own reflection with a kind of weary surprise. The room had no sign of forced entry. The window was shut. The door had been unlocked. But that means nothing in a theater, where doors are treated like suggestions. I stepped back into the corridor and found the nearest stagehand. Get Silas Vane, I said, and get Barton Klein, and tell them not to touch anything, which means you should also not touch anything. He stared at my face, saw something in it he did not like, and ran. In less than a minute Vane was there, pushing past people. He saw me at the door and tried to shove in. I blocked him with a hand. Do not, I said. His eyes flared. Move. Latter, I replied. First, you look from here. He leaned and saw the body. His face drained of color, and the contempt drained with it, leaving only shock. My God, he whispered. He missed his cue. Barton Klein arrived moments later, breathless, with two assistants trailing behind him like worried commas. He tried to force his way to the door, and I blocked him too. He glared at me, then looked past me and saw Leo Ransom in the mirror light. For a second, the producer mask slipped. Something raw showed. Then it snapped back into place, harder than before. What is this? He demanded. This, I said, is the worst publicity you never ask for. Klein's jaw clenched. Call the police. I already did, I said. And while we wait, nobody goes in, nobody touches, nobody cleans up, not even with their eyes. Klein stared at me as if he wanted to buy me and could not find the price. You think this is connected to your ridiculous cab story? I nodded toward the dead man. Fear does heavy lifting. Someone frightened him, manipulated him, and now someone has arranged him like a final tableau. That is not random. That is theater. I told him to rest. He said he would. I looked at the mirror lights, still humming. He did rest. A woman's voice rose behind us, sharp and panicked. Where is Leo? We are 15 minutes to places. It was Marjorie Dax, the leading lady already in costume, eyes bright with the particular fear that comes when a performance is about to collapse. She pushed through the small crowd and saw our faces. "What?" she demanded. I did not answer. I stepped aside just enough for her to see into the dressing room. She took one look, and the steel in her spine wavered. "Oh," she said softly. Then she swallowed it down. Number, this is not happening." "It is," I told her. "And it is happening on opening night, which means it was chosen." The corridor filled with whispers fast, spreading like smoke. Somebody said, "He is dead." And Broadway, which loves drama, swallowed it whole. I turned away from the noise and focused on the quiet facts. No weapon, no blood, no broken furniture, no sign of struggle. His costume perfect, his hair arranged. That meant whoever did it had time, and whoever did it wanted him found like this. I also remembered the note. "Do not look, do not disobey." He had obeyed someone. He had come here, he had sat, he had waited, and he had died before the curtain ever rose. Inspector Kramer arrived with 2 uniforms and the expression of a man who has been handed a headache wrapped in silk. He pushed through the crowd, took one look at the doorway, and his face hardened. "Goodwin," he growled. "You again." "I try to stay memorable," I said. Kramer edged past me and looked in, careful not to step over the threshold. His eyes took in the scene and his mouth compressed. "Dead," he said. "Yes," I replied. "Very dead, also very arranged." Kramer's gaze snapped to me. "You were here." "I was asked to be," I said. "Wolfe has a client who believed a cab drove itself. Last night we found the cab, the mechanism, and a bag of money meant for Leo ransom. Today he vanishes before the first cue and turns up like this." Kramer muttered something about his ulcer and then barked orders at the uniforms. He looked at Klein, at Vane, at Marjorie Dax, and finally at me. "You tell Wolfe," he said, "that if he wants to play games, he can play them with my permission. Otherwise, I will haul him in." "I will tell him," I said. "He will be thrilled." Kramer snorted. "He will not be thrilled." "No," I agreed. "He will be offended. That is worse." As the police began their careful work, I stepped aside and pulled out my phone to call Wolfe. The hum of the mirror light still floated out of the dressing room, steady and indifferent, like a jury that refuses to blink. When Wolfe answered, his voice was already impatient, as if he had been expecting disaster and resented being right. "Archie, opening night just became closing night," I said. "Leo Ransom is dead in his dressing room. Dressed, posed, no obvious weapon, no forced entry. The mirror lights are humming like they have alibis." There was a pause, and I could almost see Wolfe's eyes narrowing in his chair. Then he said softly, "Good, now we have a crime." "Good," I repeated. "You should say that louder at the funeral." Wolfe ignored me. "You found the note's purpose." Fear was the leash. The cab was the whistle. Now the corpse is the message. "Archie, bring me everything, especially the money and any typed material." "I have a chorus girl with a typed note too," I added. "Semi-tuned, different lyrics." Wolfe's voice tightened. "Excellent. Do not lose it. Do not indulge Mr. Kramer. Observe, report." I hung up and slipped the phone away. In the corridor, people whispered and stared, and tried not to be the one who cried first. Broadway hates tears unless they are rehearsed. I looked at the dressing room door again, at the dead man seated before his own reflection, like a performer waiting for applause that would never come. Someone had written him an ending. Now Wolfe would insist on reading the whole script. Chapter 4. A debt that walks like a man. If you want to learn what a man fears, ask him about money. If you want to learn what he hides, ask him about the money he does not have. Wolfe knows that. Wolfe also knows that ghosts are lazy. They do not forge receipts. They do not type threats. And they do not pay mechanics cash to bolt rods under a cab seat. The morning after Leo Ransom died, the brownstone on West 35th felt unusually quiet, which is how it always feels when Wolfe is busy. The orchids had been tended at their sacred hour, Fritz had produced breakfast that could have made a bishop forgive sin, and Wolfe was in the office with a stack of paper that had arrived from 3 directions. The police, the theater, and my pocket. Inspector Kramer had not been generous with cooperation, but he had been generous with irritation, and irritation makes him careless. I had heard enough to know the medical examiner thought Ransom died without a visible wound, likely poison or suffocation. The dressing room door had no sign of prying, and the window had been latched from inside. That meant access and opportunity mattered more than brute force. Wolfe looked at me over his glasses. "Archie, I will require a simple answer." "You are in the wrong business," I said. He ignored that. "Who did Mr. Ransom owe?" I blinked. "Oh, you mean money?" "I mean obligation," Wolfe replied. "Money is only one form of it, but it is the form that leaves paper." I put my notebook on my lap and began sorting what we had. Publicly, Leo looked clean. Good apartment, good suits, good agent. Privately, his building doorman says he had late. Night visitors once or twice a week for the last month. Men, not fans. Quiet men. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Names?" "No names yet," I admitted. "But I brought you something better than the doorman's imagination." I laid on Wolfe's desk a set of photocopied documents Saul Panzer had obtained from a cooperative clerk in the theater office, plus a small wad of items I had collected in the dressing room, before Kramer decided I was contaminating his crime scene by breathing. Wolfe did not touch them. He leaned forward an inch, studying. "Receipts. Loan receipts," I said. "Not bank loans, private, a company called Harbor Mutual Finance." Wolfe's brows rose, a charming name. "Harbor," I said, as in safe place. "Mutual, as in they take and you lose finance, as in they will smile while they do it." I slid the top paper closer. "These are signed by Leo Ransom. Amounts that start small and then grow like weeds. Also an addendum that says failure to pay allows the lender to demand alternative performance." Wolfe's eyes sharpened. "Alternative performance." "Exactly," I said. "That is either legal language for repossession or illegal language for making a man do what he is told." Wolfe sat back, satisfied in a way that made his satisfaction annoying. "Proceed." I reached into my pocket and produced a small folded note, wrapped in tissue like something fragile. "Also this, found in his makeup table drawer, folded like a confession." Wolfe's gaze pinned it. "Typed." "Yes," I said. "Different from the cab note. This one is friendly, if you enjoy threats dressed in politeness." I read it aloud. "Leo, you are late again. You are also lucky. Pay what you owe on Friday or I will come to you, and I will not come alone. Keep your face clean. You are valuable when you are visible." "No signature." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Valuable when visible, that aligns with the spectacle of his death." "It also aligns," I said, "with a debt collector who knows how to smile." Wolfe's eyes flicked. "You have met such a person." "I met him this morning," I said. "He came to the theater while the police were still pretending they owned the place. He introduced himself as if he expected applause." Wolfe's eyes held mine. "Name." "Calvin Strake." Wolfe repeated it once, savoring the syllables the way he savors a good sauce. "Calvin Strake. Describe him." 40. 5. Maybe. Medium height, medium build, medium everything, except the smile. The smile is too polite. It looks like it has been practiced in a mirror, the way actors practice grief. He wears a gray suit that never wrinkles and a tie that always looks newly bribed. He has hands that do not sweat. He asked after Leo as if he were asking about a sick pet. Wolfe made a small sound. "And he appears in these documents." "He does," I said, and tapped the loan receipts. "The company name is on the letterhead, but the collector's name is on the contact line. Calvin Strake office number. Extension, like a man who expects people to call and beg." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Then the question becomes, did he collect by fear, by poison, or by both? I said, "He also shows up in stage, door gossip." The guard described him as the fellow who sometimes waits across the street and watches Leo walk to his car. Always polite, never pushes. The kind of man who can ruin you without raising his voice. Wolfe settled deeper into his chair. "Good. Now we have a debt and a collector. What else did Mr. Ransom owe? That is where it gets crowded, I said. Back rent for one. His landlord says he was 2 months behind before the show started selling. Also gambling. Not at a big casino. Small games, private. The kind that start as fun and end as math. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. Source, his dresser, I said. A fellow named Kenny Laird. Loyal, talkative, and terrified of being blamed. Kenny swears Leo had a habit of borrowing cash the day after certain nights. Kenny also swears the producer, Barton Klein, knew about it. Wolfe's eyes flicked. Barton Klein, the financier, we have already met him in your report as a man who believes he owns everything. He believes, I said. That opening night was his personal holiday. He is furious the holiday ended with a corpse. Wolfe's hand lifted slightly. Do not be theatrical. Archie, you are not paid for that. Klein may be guilty of arrogance, but that is not yet murder. Focus on paper. Paper is why I am here, I told him. After I met Strake at the theater, I followed him. Wolfe's eyes narrowed with approval he would never admit, and he left like a man who does not hurry because he assumes the sidewalk will wait. He walked 3 blocks, entered an office building on 42nd, and rode the elevator to the 10th floor. The directory listed Harbor Mutual Finance. I did not go in, because I am not invisible. Wolfe's mouth tightened. You are rarely invisible. I am memorable, I said. Instead, I waited in the lobby and watched who else went up. 2 men. One was a thin fellow with a quick walk and a folder. The other was a mechanic type, bulky, with grease in the creases of his hands. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. A mechanic. Yes, I said. Not Hank from Hollis Auto. Different. This one looked like he could build a puppet and then punch you for admiring it. Wolfe's fingers steepled. Harbor Mutual employs mechanics. That is unusual. Unless, I offered, their business includes devices. Wolfe's gaze did not waver. Or includes the procurement of devices continue. I leaned back, letting my memory do its work. After a while, Strake came down with the 2 men. They talked briefly near the door. Strake handed the mechanic an envelope. Cash likely. The mechanic nodded and left. Wolfe's eyes were flat. A payment for what? That, I said, is why paper matters. I called Saul and asked him to pull any public records on Harbor Mutual. Not much, but enough to show they are tied to a holding company called Klein Consolidated. Wolfe's brows rose slowly. Barton Klein. Sammy Klein, I said. So the producer owns the money. Lending outfit that had Leo by the throat. That does not prove murder, but it makes motive sit up and wave. Wolfe's voice stayed calm. Motive is a common commodity. Opportunity and method are rarer. What of method? Poison, I said. No weapon, no struggle. He was posed. That means the killing was quiet. The dressing room lights were on, humming. Someone could have slipped something into his water, his makeup, even his costume collar. Actors are handled like dolls backstage. Everyone touches something. Wolfe's eyes held mine. And yet the room was arranged. That suggests time after death. Or, I said, a death that looked like sleep long enough for someone to pose him. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Precisely. I stood and walked to the side table where Fritz had left coffee. I poured a cup and drank it, because coffee is a practical prayer. Wolfe watched me with mild disapproval, as if caffeine were a vulgar habit. Then again, Wolfe has his own habits, and one of them is controlling everyone else's, Archie, he said. I want Mr. Strake in this office. Today? I asked. Now, Wolfe said. I grinned. Now is ambitious. It is necessary, Wolfe replied. He is a hinge. The debt connects to the notes to fear, the fear to obedience, and obedience to Mr. Ransom's death bring him. Paper does not run, I said. People do. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Then follow him faster. I left the brownstone and took a cab, the regular kind with a driver who looked bored and real. As we cut across town, New York showed me its wet face again. The rain had stopped, but the streets still shone, and the city still moved like it was late for something. Broadway posters stared down at pedestrians, promising glamour while delivering exhaustion. Harbor Mutual Finance was on the 10th floor, and the lobby downstairs had a guard with a newspaper, and the glazed look of a man who has seen too many faces and remembered none. I rode up and found the office suite, neat, quiet, and trimmed in grey. It smelled like new carpet and old threats. A receptionist with perfect hair asked my name as if it were a nuisance. "Archie Goodwin," I said. "I need to see Mr. Calvin Strake." Her smile was professional, which means it contained no warmth and plenty of control. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said. "I have urgency. It is similar." She started to refuse, then hesitated because I let my eyes harden slightly. It is not a wolf stare, but it has helped. "I will see if he is available," she said, and picked up the phone. After a moment, a door opened and Calvin Strake appeared. Up close, he was exactly as advertised. Grey suit, polite smile, eyes that measured. He offered his hand. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, "I wondered when you would come." "Did you?" I said, shaking his hand. It was dry. That is always a bad sign in a man who deals in other people's sweat. "You sound like you expect customers." "I expect consequences," he replied. "You are connected to Nero Wolfe." "I am connected," I said, "to Trouble. Right now, Trouble wants to ask you questions." His smile did not change. "About Leo Ransom." "Yes," I said. "About his debts. About your notes about why an actor ends up dead and posed like a showpiece." Strake's eyes remained calm, but the smile sharpened a fraction. "Mr. Ransom was a client. We had a contractual relationship. His death is unfortunate." "Unfortunate," I repeated. "So is stepping in a puddle. Murder is a stronger word." He inclined his head. "You are welcome to speak with our counsel." "I prefer," I said, "to speak with you. Mr. Wolfe would like to meet you." Strake's gaze held mine. "Does he?" "Yes," I said. "And he does not like leaving his house, so if you want to remain polite, you will come to him." Strake's smile stayed in place. "I am always polite." "Good," I said. "Then you will not mind explaining in Wolfe's office why your company is tied to Barton Klein, why your client was being ordered around by typed notes, and why a mechanic from your building took an envelope of cash this morning." For the first time his smile faltered, only an instant. "Enough," he said softly. "You watch people closely." "It is a hobby," I said. "Also a job." He hesitated, then nodded. "Very well, I will come. Not because I fear your insinuations, but because I dislike misunderstanding." "I dislike it too," I said. "It makes people get hurt." On the elevator down, Strake stood beside me like a man attending a meeting he already expects to win. His cologne was faint and expensive. His posture was correct. Everything about him said law and order, except the part that dealt in fear. Outside on the sidewalk, as we waited for a cab, he said mildly, "You are wrong about one thing, Mr. Goodwin." "Oh," I said, "only one." He looked at me, and the polite smile returned in full. Leo Ransom did not die because he owed money. He died because he owed time. Before I could ask what that meant, a cab pulled up, and he opened the door for me like a gentleman. I got in, watched the meter click awake, and felt New York roll under us. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe would be waiting in his chair, surrounded by orchids and certainty. Calvin Strake would sit in the red leather chair and smile politely. Wolfe would ask questions that turned paper into knives, and somewhere behind all of it, the person who had typed the notes and built the puppet cab would be listening, because fear is useful only when it has an audience. I looked out at the passing buildings and thought of Leo Ransom posed in mirror light, valuable when visible. A debt can be paid with money. A debt of time gets paid in something else. Chapter 5, The Garage. With the quiet doors, the thing about a ghost is that it never pays rent. It haunts for free, which is one reason Wolfe has never respected the breed. Wolfe respects only what can be priced, measured, and traced, preferably in that order. A driverless cab may frighten an actor into obedience, but it also has a license plate, a registration, and a place where the grease goes when the show is over. That afternoon, Calvin Strake sat in the red leather chair as if it had been upholstered for him. His grey suit looked freshly pressed, his smile looked freshly manufactured, and his eyes looked as if they had never once blinked at a bill. Wolfe, behind his desk, watched him with the detached interest he usually reserves for a new orchid fungus. Strake said, "Mr. Wolfe, I regret the circumstances." Wolfe's tone was flat. "Your regret is ornamental. My interest is practical. Mr. Ransom borrowed money from your firm." "From Harbor Mutual Finance," Strake replied, hands folded neatly. "Yes, and you collected," Wolfe said. "We attempted to," Strake corrected. "Mr. Ransom's payments were irregular." Archie Goodwin, meaning me, sat with my notebook open, watching Strake's face the way a cat watches a mouse hole. He was too smooth. Smooth men always have something to hide. "And it is rarely their skin care routine," Wolfe said. "I have read the phrase, alternative performance on your documents. Explain it." Strake's smile did not waver. Standard contractual language. "If a borrower defaults, the lender may seek remedies." "Remedies," Wolfe repeated. "A remedy that involves a driverless cab, perhaps." The smile twitched, a fraction. "I have no knowledge of cabs." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "You have knowledge of fear. Your note to Mr. Ransom contained the phrase, valuable when visible. That is not standard banking language. It is theatrical." Strake's hands stayed folded. "That note was not mine," I said, "typed on what looks like a manual typewriter, clean alignment. Same habit of spacing as the note delivered to Ransom's apartment. Also a similar tone. Polite threat, like a man saying please while stepping on your foot." Strake glanced at me just once, and the glance was almost friendly. Mr. Goodwin enjoys metaphor. Wolfe ignored the attempt at charm. "The money bag found in the cab. Explain that." Strake's smile stayed. "I have not seen it." Wolfe's voice cooled. "You will see it now." He nodded to me. I placed the canvas bag on the desk and opened it enough to show the neat bundles. Strake's eyes flicked to it and back, quick and controlled. A man who had never seen it would have stared longer, either from curiosity or greed. Strake looked like a man who recognizes a prop he did not want on stage, Wolfe said. This was meant to be in Mr. Ransom's possession, perhaps to make him appear guilty of theft or bribery, perhaps to compel him to deliver it. To whom? Strake's smile thinned. "I cannot answer that." Wolfe's lips tightened. "You can, you choose not to." Strake's posture remained perfect. "Mr. Wolfe, you are attempting to entangle me in speculation. My firm lent money. A borrower died. That is tragic. It does not make me a murderer." Wolfe leaned forward slightly, which in Wolfe terms is a lunge. "I do not yet need you to be a murderer, Mr. Strake. I need you to be a conduit. Conduits can be opened." Strake's eyes hardened faintly. "And if I decline?" Wolfe's voice was calm. "Then you will leave this office and you will be arrested on suspicion of extortion, conspiracy, and whatever other unpleasant nouns Inspector Kramer finds in his pocket. Mr. Goodwin has already supplied him with your name, your firm, your notes, and your connection to Barton Klein." Strake's smile returned, but there was steel behind it now. "You assume I fear Inspector Kramer." Wolfe's eyes stayed steady. "I assume you fear disorder. The police create disorder. In courts, your smile is irrelevant." Strake sat silent for 3 seconds. "I counted them," he then said. "May I speak plainly?" Wolfe's eyebrows rose slightly. "You may attempt it." Strake's voice lost its polish for the first time, becoming almost human. "Harbor Mutual is not a violent enterprise. We do not kill clients. Dead clients do not pay." Wolfe made a small sound of agreement. "Indeed," Strake continued. "There are individuals who use our paper. They use debts as leverage. I manage accounts. I do not design. Theatrics," I said. "Then who does?" Strake looked at me and, for a second, the polite mask slipped enough to show irritation. "A man named Rolf Brenner." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Who? A consultant," Strake said. He brings ideas. He understands persuasion. Persuasion, Wolfe repeated. Does he understand mechanics? Strake hesitated. He understands how to hire them. Wolfe's gaze pinned him. Where will I find Mr. Brenner? Strake's hands unfolded, then folded again, as if his fingers had their own nervous system. I do not know his home address. Wolfe's voice cut. You know where he conducts business. Strake exhaled, slight. There is a garage. That changed the room. You could feel it. Fritz was in the doorway with a tray, and even Fritz's calm eyes sharpened a fraction, which is unusual. Fritz is difficult to impress with crime. He has seen too many men overeat, Wolfe said. A garage. Strake nodded once. A place where certain vehicles are prepared. Wolfe's eyes flicked to me. Archie, already listening, I said. Wolfe addressed Strake. You will provide the address. Strake's smile returned. Weaker now. I can provide a location. But I warn you, Mr. Wolfe, that you will find nothing. The doors are quiet. Quiet doors, I said. That is poetic for a man who claims he is not theatrical. Strake's eyes met mine, and the polite smile became a small, tight line. It is practical. Quiet doors do not invite attention, Wolfe said. Address. Strake gave it. It was in Long Island City, a block that did not have much in the way of honest traffic. You could tell by the name of the street alone. Honest streets have names that sound like trees and presidents. Unhonest streets have names that sound like storage. When Strake left, Wolfe sat back, satisfied in a way that annoyed me because I was the one who would get my shoes dirty. He said, Archie, you will go. I will go, I agreed. Do you want Saul? Wolfe nodded once. Yes, and take Mr. Ransom's notes and the money bag. The garage is a node. You will determine who uses it. And if the node bites, I said, Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Do not be bitten. That is the sort of instruction Wolfe finds adequate. Saul met me outside 10 minutes later, hat down, hands in his coat pockets, looking like a man who might be waiting for a bus or waiting for a confession. We took my car. I prefer driving myself when the destination may include a hasty retreat. Long Island City in late afternoon looks like New York's back room. The buildings are lower, the streets wider, and the air carries that mix of river damp and machine oil. There are places where you can hear your own footsteps, and that alone is suspicious. The address Strake gave us was a brick box with a roll-up door, and no sign big enough to invite customers. The only lettering was a small metal plate near the doorbell that read, in neat stamped letters, Eastward Service. Eastward, like a direction, like an instruction. Quiet doors, Saul murmured. Yeah, I said. They whisper. We parked across the street. A truck rumbled past and did not slow. A man in a hoodie walked by with his head down and did not glance at the building. New York is generous that way. It pretends not to see. We waited 10 minutes. A black sedan arrived and pulled into a narrow driveway at the side. The driver got out and opened the passenger door, and a man stepped out who looked like commerce, dressed as a person. Medium height, medium build, neat hair, no wasted motion. He carried a slim case and moved with the confidence of someone who believes the city has already agreed with him. Brenner, Saul said quietly, without certainty. Maybe, I said, or maybe another polite monster. The man punched a code on a small keypad by a side door. The door clicked open without drama. He went in. The door shut softly, as if embarrassed to be heard. Saul looked at me. How do you want to play it? I want to play it the Wolfe way, I said. By not getting shot. Then we need paper, Saul said. Paper. I agreed, and nodded toward a row of mailboxes mounted beside the door. They were clean, too clean. Most mailboxes in that neighborhood looked like they have been in fistfights. We walked over like we belonged. Saul stood with his back to the street, a polite human wall. I examined the mailboxes. The names were not names. They were initials, numbers, nonsense, shell names. A place like that does not want its tenants remembered. There was one label that caught my eye. AMF Suite B Harbor Mutual Finance, convenient. I took out my phone and snapped a picture, because pictures are modern paper. We then did what you do when you are not invited, but you are curious. We listened. The building was quiet, but not empty. From behind the roll, up door came a faint metallic tap, then the low cough of an engine turning over. A smell leaked out too, the warm, bitter smell of exhaust mixed with something sharper. Solvent, cleaning fluid. Tools cleaned too well, I murmured. Saul nodded. And a floor swept too often. I walked to the corner and found a small side window set high. It was grimy, but not grimy enough. Someone had wiped it recently, as if they wanted to see out, but did not want you to see in. I stood on tiptoe and peered. Inside, the garage was bigger than it looked from outside. 2 vehicles sat under tarps. Tools hung on pegboards in neat rows. Too neat. Workbenches were cleared. Too cleared. A man in coveralls stood at a bench, hands moving with practiced care. His face was turned away. Then the man in the slim case crossed the floor. I caught his profile as he leaned over the bench. It was not straight. Different jaw, sharper nose. The kind of face you might forget unless it wanted to be remembered. He gestured to something on the bench, and the mechanic nodded. Money changed hands. I could not see the bills, but I could see the gesture, smooth and familiar. Then the man looked up, and for a second, his eyes aimed at the window like a gun barrel. I ducked back instinctively, which is not heroic, but is effective. Saul's voice stayed calm. Spotted. Maybe, I said. Or maybe he just likes aiming. We moved away from the building casually, because running is a confession. We got back in the car and drove around the block. When we returned, the black sedan was still there. But now its trunk was open, and the mechanic was lifting something into it. It was a long object wrapped in canvas. A rig, Saul murmured. Or a body, I said, and felt my stomach tighten. The object went into the trunk. The mechanic shut it. The man with the slim case got in the passenger seat. The sedan pulled out and rolled away, smooth and ordinary. We followed at a distance, 2 cars back, blending into afternoon traffic. The sedan headed toward Manhattan, then turned off before the bridge, circling instead to a nondescript lot behind a warehouse. It stopped. The man and the mechanic got out, opened the trunk, and carried the wrapped object into the warehouse. Saul said, "That warehouse belongs to Klein Consolidated. I checked this morning." I looked at him. "You checked fast." Saul shrugged. "Paper is quick when it is public." That settled something in my mind. The garage was not art. It was commerce. It served someone with money and reach, someone who could lease buildings and hide them under shell names and pay cash to men who kept quiet. I said, Wolfe was right. The rigging is not a prank. It is an instrument. Saul's eyes stayed on the warehouse door and the cab. The cab was not meant to kill, I said slowly. If they wanted Leo dead, they could have done it without a rolling circus. The cab was meant to herd him, push him where they wanted, make him deliver money, make him show up at a certain door, make him obey. Saul nodded. Fear is a shepherd's dog. Exactly, I said. And when he stopped being useful, they posed him and left him for the spotlight. We drove back toward the brownstone, because Wolfe would want the facts while they were still warm. On the way, I thought about Leo Ransom's last day. He had been frightened into silence, pushed into obedience, and then arranged like a prop so that everyone would see him. Valuable when visible, it was theater used as a weapon, and someone behind the curtain was writing the cues. When we reached West 35th, Wolfe was waiting in his office with that look he gets when the world has finally become interesting enough to match his intellect. I put the phone picture on his desk and said, "Your garage is leased under shell labels. One mailbox says HMF Suite B. Tools cleaned too well. Floors swept too often. Doors quiet enough to whisper." We saw a man, likely Brenner, paying a mechanic and moving a wrapped rig into a warehouse owned by Klein Consolidated. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Klein again, commerce," I said. "Not art." The haunting was a business expense. Wolfe sat very still. "And you have realized?" "Yes," I said. "The cab was not meant to kill, it was meant to herd." Wolfe's mouth tightened, and for an instant I saw that he enjoyed being right, not because it flattered him, but because it meant the world could still be solved. He said softly, "Good. Then the next question is simple." I waited. Wolfe's eyes held mine. Where were they herding him? That was the question that made the quiet doors feel loud in my head. Because if the cab had been a shepherd's dog, then there had been a pen, and in that pen there would be someone waiting with a knife that did not need to be seen. I said, "We will find out." Wolfe's voice stayed calm, which is how you know he is dangerous. "Yes, Archie, we will." Chapter 6. Logistics wearing a mask. Wolfe explained it the way he explains orchids, calmly, precisely, as if human panic were merely a change in humidity. We were in the office with late afternoon, light slanting across the rug, Fritz moving softly beyond the door, and the faint, clean hum upstairs that meant Theodore was tending the orchids, as if they were the only citizens in New York who deserved reliability. Wolfe had the typed notes laid out like specimens, squared to the edge of his desk. He did not touch them. He rarely touches anything that has been handled by the world. "Archie," he said, "you persist in calling it a ghost cab. It is shorter than mechanically manipulated vehicle used for psychological herding," I replied. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "The illusion is not complex. It is merely sufficient. That is what makes it effective." He tapped one of the photographs I had taken of the rig we found, the crude linkage and the taped wire. A taxi does not require an elaborate apparatus to move a short distance in a controlled manner. The rods under the seat you observed were used to manipulate the steering lock, not to steer freely, but to hold a set line. I leaned back. "So the cab is on rails, except the rails are invisible." "Your phrasing is tolerable," Wolfe said. "The latches near the console secure the linkage so that the wheel maintains a slight turn with a carefully chosen route. Few turns, modest traffic, the vehicle will drift predictably. The purpose is not to cross the city. It is to perform a brief and convincing demonstration." "And the pedals," I said. Wolfe nodded. "A hidden mechanism can depress the accelerator slightly and then release it. The brake can be engaged by spring tension or a simple stop. Again, not for speed or finesse, but for the modest requirement of moving from curb to curb, stopping at predictable points. Enough motion to convince a man already prepared to see what he fears." I said, "A mind is lazy. Give it a story, and it will move into it like an apartment with cheap rent." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Exactly. The cab was a mask. The instrument was fear. Fear makes a man obedient. Obedience makes him predictable." That word predictable had been floating around in my head since we found Leo Ransom posed in his dressing room, like a final tableau. I did not like how neatly it fit, Wolfe continued, voice even. "When a man believes a monster is after him, he behaves in patterns. He leaves at the same time. He uses the same door. He walks the same streets. He checks behind him with the same rhythm. He repeats what he knows in an attempt to control what he does not. Superstition turns into routine," I said. "Routine," Wolfe replied, "is the true trap." He gestured toward the notes again. "Consider their purpose. They do not convey information. They condition behavior. A man does not need to be told not to shout unless you intend him to remain silent. He does not need to be told not to look unless you intend him to ignore something before him. He does not need to be told to take a cab unless you intend him to be where you can steer him." "Training," I said. "Yes," Wolfe said, and his eyes hardened slightly. "Training. They were training him, Archie. Training him to be quiet, to be compliant, to move along a chosen path without questioning. The cab was not meant to kill. If the intent had been murder, there are simpler means than a rolling circus. The cab was meant to herd." I thought of the bag of money in the front footwell, the typed envelope with Ransom's name, the careful little performance designed to make him feel both frightened and ashamed. Ashamed men do not call the police. Frightened men do what they are told, I asked. "Herd him where?" Wolfe's gaze went to the photograph Saul had identified as tied to Klein Consolidated, and his voice remained calm in the way that means the world is about to become smaller and uglier. toward an exchange point, toward a place where he would deliver money, receive instructions, or be photographed doing something compromising, toward a door that would open at the same time, every time, because he had been trained to arrive when summoned. Blackmail, I said. Control, Wolfe corrected. Blackmail is merely one form. I exhaled, and when he stopped cooperating, Wolfe's mouth tightened. Then he became an example. His death was arranged to be seen, the lighting, the costume, the posture. He was valuable when visible, and therefore he was displayed. A truck honked. A pedestrian cursed. New York never pauses to observe its own crimes. It simply makes room for them and calls it traffic. I turned back to Wolfe. Kramer thinks poison. Wolfe nodded. Likely poison is efficient. It creates minimal disturbance. It allows the corpse to remain presentable. It also delays certainty because people look for a weapon and find only their assumptions. And the posing, I said, that takes time. It takes access, Wolfe replied. Access and confidence. In a theater, access is abundant. Everyone enters, everyone touches something. That is why the trap was not sprung by force. It was sprung by predictability. I sat forward. So what do we do? Watch the garage again? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. We do what they did. We exploit the same principle. A man who believes he controls logistics will behave predictably. He will repeat methods. He will return to the same quiet doors at the same hours because he believes his system is invisible. And we make it visible, I said. Yes, Wolfe replied. We remove the mask, not by chasing the cab, but by following the commerce that built it. Leases, payments, receipts, accounts. Fear is theatrical. Money is literal. I nodded slowly, feeling the pattern tighten. Paper does not run, people do. Wolfe's gaze held mine. Then run after the people, Archie, but carry the paper with you. The paper will tell you where they must go. That was Wolfe's version of encouragement. It was also a warning. The scheme had been built to make a man walk the same streets, at the same times, through the same doors. Now we would walk those streets instead, and whoever had been holding the leash would notice. Predictability was the trap. We were about to spring it from the other side. Chapter 7. The dressing room puzzle theater people talk about privacy. The way bartenders talk about sobriety. They know the word, they respect it in theory, and they do not expect to see much of it during working hours. A dressing room door has a lock, yes, but so does a candy jar, and neither is proof of security. In a theater, privacy is always borrowed, and the lender always keeps a key. I spent the next morning reconstructing Leo Ransom's last hour, the way Wolfe reconstructs a meal he suspects. Fritz cooked with an ingredient he did not announce, calmly, suspiciously, and with an insistence on sequence. If you want truth, you do not ask people what they think happened. You ask what happened at 7:12 and who was standing closest to the clock. By 11 I was back at the theater with a notebook, a headache, and Inspector Kramer's unspoken permission, which is the only kind he ever gives me. The corridor outside, Ransom's dressing room, was still too clean, as if the building had tried to scrub away guilt with a mop. The mirror lights inside were off now. The room looked smaller without them, like a stage after the audience leaves. Kramer's men had taken the obvious items. They had not taken the useful ones. I started with the stage manager, because stage managers know everything and forgive nothing. Her name was Yvonne Pike, and she had the eyes of a woman who has watched too many egos collapse and has learned not to duck. She looked me over. You are Wolfe's boy. I am Wolfe's man, I corrected. Boy makes it sound like I get an allowance. She did not smile. What do you want? Leo's last hour, I said. Not impressions times. Her mouth tightened, but she reached for a clipboard anyway. The clipboard is a stage manager's Bible. Half-hour call was 7:30, she said. He was in the building by then. I saw him. He looked pale. Pale is common, I said. Not that pale, she replied. He was shaking. He asked me if there was a back exit open. I wrote that down. He wanted a way out. Yes, she said. I told him no, opening night. Everything is controlled. He nodded, like he hadn't heard me. Did he take any messages? I asked. She flipped a page. There was a phone message at 7:18. The front desk took it. They brought it back. I saw the slip. It said, "Tell Leo to come early, important." Who called? I asked. Yvonne's eyes narrowed. They said. The caller did not leave a name, just a voice, male, calm. Calm voices are always the worst. A frantic man makes mistakes. A calm man makes plans. I asked. Did he receive anything physical? Note, envelope, flowers. She snorted. He received flowers by the dozen. He did not look at them. He walked past them like they were scenery. Who was with him? I said. Who saw him go to the dressing room? Yvonne's gaze flicked down the corridor. Kenny. His dresser. And Marjorie Dax passed him near the stairs. She said hello. He barely responded. I thanked her and went to find Kenny Laird. Kenny was the type of young man who lives in the orbit of talent and mistakes that orbit for friendship. His hands were stained with costume dye, and his eyes looked like he had not slept since the body was found, which was probably true. He saw me and blurted, "I did not do it." That is a fine opening line, I said. It saves time. Now tell me what you did do. He swallowed. I brought him his first act costume at 7:40. He was in the dressing room, sitting. He had his head in his hands. Sick, I said. Kenny corrected. He asked if anyone had been in the room. And I pressed, and I said no, Kenny said quickly. Because I had not. The room was clean. I set the costume out. I told him he needed makeup. He said he was fine. Did he drink anything? I asked. Kenny hesitated. There was a glass of water on the table. Half full. Did you bring it? No, Kenny said. I asked him if he wanted fresh. He said no. He said it tasted strange, but he would manage. That made my pencil pause. He said it tasted strange. Kenny nodded, miserable. He made a face. Like it was metal. He said the tap in the dressing room always tasted like metal. That is convenient, I said. Kenny's eyes widened. You think it was poisoned. I think it was not water, I said. Who could have put it there? Anion, Kenny said, and the word came out like a plea. Stagehands go in and out. Makeup people, wardrobe, the director, the producer. Did you see anyone leave the room? I asked. Kenny shook his head. Number. I left him at 7:45. I came back at 8:10 with his second shirt. He did not answer the knock. I thought he was resting. Then the stage manager sent me again at 8:25. That is when I found him. I wrote the times. The last hour was beginning to look like a timetable, and timetables are Wolfe's favorite kind of evidence. I found Marjorie Dax in a rehearsal room, pacing like a caged cat. Off stage she looked older, sharper, less forgiving. Her eyes held mine with the kind of anger women reserve for men who bring trouble into their lives. You are digging, she said. That is my job, I replied. Tell me about 7:35. Her lips pressed together. I saw Leo near the stairs. He looked awful. I asked if he was all right. He said, yes, he lied badly. Did he say anything else? I asked. He asked if Barton was in the building, she said. I said yes. He looked like he wanted to be sick. Number, I do not invade people also. He did not invite me. Did anyone have reason to invite themselves? I asked. Marjorie's eyes narrowed. Everyone. That is the point. Theatre is a place where everyone's door is open even when it is closed. I left her with that and went to the one man who always benefits when everyone else is busy. The stage manager again. Not for talk, but for paper. I asked to see the call board and the quick change notes, the schedule sheets taped backstage that told every person when to be where. Yvonne did not like it, but she showed me. The sheets were full of times and initials and scrawled reminders. They also had something else. A small handwritten adjustment made in fresh ink. Leo R. Call time moved from 7:30 to 7 o'clock. Initialed. BK. I stared at it. Yvonne saw my eyes and stiffened. Barton Klein insisted Leo be there early, said there were press photos, said there were investors. Leo argued. Barton won. Why? I asked softly, though I already felt the answer forming. Yvonne's mouth tightened. Because Barton pays the bills. I thanked her again and left the rehearsal room to make a call. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe listened without interruption as I delivered the map of the last hour. The 7:18 phone message, the adjusted call time, the glass of water that tasted like metal, the borrowed privacy of the dressing room, the fact that Ransom arrived early, alone, and shaking exactly as a frightened man would if he had been trained. When I finished, Wolfe's eyes remained steady. Good, he said. Now, we have sequence. Kramer has sequence too, I said. He has a sequence of insults. Wolfe waved that away. Archie, listen carefully. The death appears private because it occurred behind a closed door. But privacy in a theater is a fiction. Therefore, the question is not who could enter. The question is who needed him to enter early. I waited, and Wolfe delivered it. One clean question that made the whole room feel as if it had blinked. Who benefited from Mr. Ransom arriving early, alone, and shaking? The answer was not an alibi. It was a schedule, I said. Barton Klein changed the call time, initialed it. He made Leo show up an extra half-hour early. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Yes, the murderer did not need to be brave, only punctual. That is a nasty thought, I said. It is merely accurate, Wolfe replied. Now we apply pressure to the timetable. Archie, you will obtain the front desk phone log for 7:18. You will find who placed that message. You will also obtain the building doorman's record of visitors to Mr. Ransom's apartment. If a man trains another with fear, he must appear repeatedly, and repetition creates witnesses. I stood. Paper does not run. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. But it leads you to those who do. As I left, I thought about that glass of water. Half full, tasting wrong, sitting on a table in a room that belonged to everyone and no one. Poison does not need drama. It needs access and timing. And someone had arranged both, with the neat confidence of a man who thought his schedule could not be questioned. Wolfe was about to question it in front of an audience that would finally have to listen. Chapter 8. The collector's soft hands. Calvin Strake returned to the brownstone the next day, summoned again after Wolfe had more paper than patience. He arrived the way certain men arrive anywhere, as if the sidewalk had been warned in advance. Fritz admitted him with formal courtesy. Strake came into Wolfe's office, wearing confidence like a tailored suit and looking freshly pressed in both cloth and conscience. He paused, just long enough to take in the room, Wolfe behind the desk, me at my chair with a notebook, and the faint, clean scent that drifted down from the orchid rooms. Then he offered Wolfe a polite smile. Mr. Wolfe, I appreciate the chance to correct misunderstandings. Wolfe gestured to the red leather chair. Sit down, Mr. Strake. Strake sat as if he had practiced in the mirror. His suit was grey, his tie conservative, his hair obedient. His hands rested on his knees, fingers relaxed, nails clean, not a nick, not a trace of grease. Soft hands. They belong to a man who signs papers, not to a man who crawls under dashboards with a wrench between his teeth. Strake spoke smoothly. The death of Leo Ransom is unfortunate. Harbor Mutual Finance had a contractual relationship with him, nothing more. Wolfe's voice was flat. You have offered sympathy, I presume. To Mr. Klein and the theater staff, Strake said. This is a business catastrophe. Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. Your habit of turning people into accounts is tedious. Let us discuss your occupation. You collect. We service accounts. Strake corrected, still smiling. I prefer blunt nouns, Wolfe replied. You collected from Mr. Ransom by sending typed notes. Strake's smile held. Standard notices, I said. One notice. Said he was valuable when visible. Strake's eyes flicked to me for a second. I have no knowledge of that phrase. Wolfe studied him in silence for a moment. Wolfe's silences are not empty. They are crowded with intent. Then Wolfe said, Where were you between 7 and 8 on opening night? In my office. Strake answered at once. Alone? Wolfe asked. With staff, Strake replied. He named 2 employees without hesitation. Wolfe did not write it down. He does not keep facts on paper unless he wants someone else to see them. Wolfe's gaze stayed on Strake. Now tell me about the cab. Strake's smile returned to full strength. I know nothing of any cab. Wolfe's tone remained mild. You deny with ease. That suggests practice. Strake's smile cooled. Mr. Wolfe, I came to resolve misunderstandings, not to be insulted. Wolfe's mouth moved, almost a smile. Then resolve this. The cab that Mr. Ransom feared took him past Columbus Circle and turned west at 79th. Strake's lips parted. That is not the route it turned at. He stopped. I felt my eyebrows lift. I had not told Strake the route. Wolfe had not told him either. The police had not released it, yet Strake had started to correct it. Like a man who cannot resist adjusting a detail he thinks he owns. Wolfe's smile became real, but only in the way a lock smiles when the key turns. Ah, Wolfe said softly, so you do know. Strake recovered quickly, which is what polished men do. I have heard talk. Wolfe's eyes stayed steady. From whom? Strake hesitated. It was brief, but it existed, and Wolfe notices hesitation the way Theodore notices a blemish on a leaf. From Barton Klein, Strake said. Wolfe's brows rose. Mr. Klein discussed a cab route with you. He has been gathering information, Strake said. He is trying to protect his investment. Wolfe's voice turned colder. Investment again. You speak of people as if they were furniture, yet you are not a mechanic. I watched Strake's hands. They stayed quiet, clean, careful. No scar tissue, no rough knuckles. Not the hands that built the ghost ride. The hands that paid for it. Wolfe went on, almost conversational. If you did not build the apparatus, you financed it. You rented it, as men rent sin by the hour. Strake's eyes hardened. That is an accusation. It is a description, Wolfe replied. Now answer a simple question. Who hired the mechanic? Strake's jaw flexed. No One Harbor Mutual does not hire mechanics. Wolfe leaned forward slightly, which for him is aggressive. Then who paid them? Do not tell me you do not know. You are a collector. You know where money goes. Strake held Wolfe's gaze. For the first time his confidence showed a hairline crack. He was weighing the risk, deciding whether Wolfe could truly hurt him from a chair. Wolfe's voice remained quiet. Inspector Kramer is prepared to arrest you on suspicion of conspiracy and extortion. I am prepared to allow it. Alternatively, you may provide one name. Strake inhaled slowly, as if the air itself cost interest. Rolf Brenner. Wolfe nodded once. And besides the Long Island City garage, you already named, where else will Mr. Brenner be found? He uses an office arrangement at Harbor Mutual, Strake said. He comes and goes. And where does he go? Wolfe asked. Strake's eyes shifted, then returned. Back and forth between the Long Island City garage and the warehouse tied to Carline. Wolfe's gaze flicked to me. Archie. Already moving, I said, though I stayed seated long enough to watch Strake's hands one more time. Strake stood and smoothed his jacket, a small gesture of dignity that did not improve his position. Mr. Wolfe, I did not kill Leo Ransom. Wolfe's tone was indifferent. Perhaps not. But you helped train him to be obedient. Fear brought him early, alone, and shaking into a dressing room where a glass of water did not taste like water. That is management, Mr. Strake, and it is rarely innocent. Strake's smile returned, thin and strained. If you are wise, you will be careful. Men who deal in pressure do not enjoy being pressured. Wolfe looked at him steadily. Then it is fortunate that I do. Strake left. When the door closed, I exhaled and tapped my notebook. He slipped. He knew the route. Wolfe's mouth curved faintly. Yes, and you observed his hands. Soft, I said. He paid for the haunting. He did not build it. Wolfe nodded once. Good. Then we stop looking for ghosts and start looking for invoices with legs. Chapter 9. The mechanic's price. A mechanic has two kinds of fear. One is honest and practical, the fear of slipping under a car when the jack is tired, and the laws of gravity are not sentimental. The other is the kind that comes with money, the fear of a customer who smiles while he threatens and pays late because lateness is its own form of control. The second kind was waiting for me in Long Island City. I went back to the garage with the quiet doors at a time when honest places are loud. Mid-morning, trucks moving, men smoking outside loading docks, a delivery driver cursing a clipboard. Noise makes a good disguise. It also makes a man feel less alone, which is useful when you want him to talk. Saul Panzer was with me, not because I need a babysitter, but because Saul makes the air behave. He does not look dangerous. He looks reasonable, and reasonable men with hard eyes are the ones you respect. We parked down the block and walked to the side door. The keypad was still there. The door was still quiet. I did not press the code because I am not interested in announcing myself to whoever had paid to keep this place invisible. Instead, I used the old method. I knocked. A pause. Footsteps. The door opened an inch, held by a chain, and a face appeared. It was the mechanic we had seen before. Broad, thick neck, hands that had lived among tools. His eyes were wary and tired, like a man who has learned that sleep is a luxury. "What?" he said. "Morning," I told him. "We are here to buy your honesty. The last customer rented it for cheap." His eyes flicked to Saul. "Who are you?" "Company," I said. "Open the door, or we can talk with the chain between us like we are courting." He stared a second longer, then unhooked the chain and opened it fully. That told me he was more curious than brave, and more frightened than both. Inside, the garage looked exactly as it had, too neat, too clean, too careful. Tools hung in tidy rows. The floor was swept as if dust were a sin. 2 vehicles sat under tarps like sleeping animals. A workbench was cleared except for a coffee cup and a rag. The mechanic gestured. "You have 5 minutes." 5 minutes is a lot, I said. "It is enough time to make a mistake." He did not smile. Saul stood near the door, relaxed, hands in his coat pockets. That posture says, I do not need to move to win. It is reassuring if you are on his side, I said. "Your name?" He hesitated, then muttered, "Eddie." "What?" His jaw flexed. "Eddie Maas." I nodded, as if that meant something. Names are useful even when you do not recognize them. They give the police a place to aim. You moved wrapped parts into a warehouse owned by Klein Consolidated. You work in a garage leased under shell labels tied to Harbor Mutual. That is enough illegal to decorate a courtroom. Eddie's shoulders rose slightly, then fell. "You talk too much." "I get paid by the word," I said. "Now you talk. Who paid you?" His eyes darted, and the dart told me the answer had a face. "I do not know names," he said. "That is the first lie," I replied. "You know at least one. The man who handed you cash likes names. He likes control. He is not a mechanic. He has soft hands, Calvin Strake." Eddie's mouth tightened. "Strake is a suit. He is not my customer." "Then who is?" I pressed. He stared at the floor as if it could give him permission. "Brenner," he said finally. "Rolf Brenner. He comes in here like he owns the air. He talks like a professor and pays like a thief. Cash. Always cash." "That is better," I said. "Now tell me what he told you." Eddie's eyes lifted, and there was anger there now. The kind craftsmen feel when they realize they have been used as a cheap tool. "He said the actor needed a lesson," Eddie said. "He said the actor owed money and thought he could hide behind smiles and applause. He said we would scare him, herd him, make him cough up." "Herd him where?" I asked. Eddie shook his head. "Not my business. He only needed the cab to move short, from curb to curb a few turns. Enough to make the guy believe. The rest was fear." Wolfe had been right, of course. Wolfe is often right, which is why I have learned to dislike the moment he proves it. Saul spoke, mild. "The rig was designed to spook, not to kill." Eddie snapped a glance at him. Exactly. I am not a murderer. I am a mechanic. I make things move. That is all. Yet a man died, I said. Eddie's face tightened, and the anger shifted into fear. That was not me. No, I agreed. And that is the point. The haunting was Act 1. The death was Act 2. Eddie flinched at the theater language, as if it made the whole business uglier. He said, "You built the ghost ride. You did not poison the water." Eddie's eyes flicked. "Water?" "Yes," I said. "The actor died in his dressing room. No forced entry. No weapon. Likely poison. Someone who knew the dressing room routine, who could slip something into a harmless drink, who could count on him arriving early, alone and shaking." Eddie swallowed. "I do not go near theaters." "Good," I said. "Then your story matches your hands. Your hands are rough. His hands were soft. Strake's hands, Brenner's hands." Eddie's jaw flexed. "Brenner is not soft." "He is still not a mechanic," I said. "He rents mechanics." Eddie's voice dropped. He stopped paying. That was the first truly human thing he had said. I leaned in slightly. "Tell me about that." Eddie's eyes narrowed. "He paid for the build. He paid for the rehearsal runs. Then after the actor died, he came back once, grabbed his diagrams, took his case, and said we were done. No final payment, no cleanup fee, just done like I was supposed to swallow it." "And you did not," I said. "I cannot," Eddie replied. "And there was something raw in it. I got kids. I got rent. Fear works on craftsmen too, mister. We do not have agents. We do not have applause. We have bills." Saul's voice stayed calm. "So, you will help yourself by helping us." Eddie hesitated. You could see him balancing two fears. The fear of Brenner and the fear of the police. The second fear was closer now, because we had names and routes and paper. He said, "What do you want?" "Everything," I told him. "Diagrams, parts lists, invoices, lease papers, anything Brenner touched, anything he said, anything he wrote." Eddie let out a short laugh that had no humor. He did not write. He dictated. He brought typed notes sometimes, instructions. He liked typing, made him feel official. That mattered. Typed notes were our thread. We needed the same machine, the same habit, the same spacing, the same fingerprints of language. "Did he ever type here?" I asked. Eddie shook his head. "Number, he brings paper. He takes paper like a priest with sins." "Where does he go when he leaves?" I asked. Eddie hesitated, then pointed with his chin. "Warehouse. The one by the river. He likes that place. Quiet. Plenty of room." "Klein's warehouse," I said. Eddie's mouth tightened. "Maybe. I do not ask who owns what. I fix what is in front of me." "Last question," I said. "Did Brenner ever mention the dressing room?" Eddie's eyes flicked to mine, then away. "He said the actor would be alone early. He said the schedule was adjusted. He said the man would be too scared to bring anyone." That was it, the hinge clicking into place. Brenner knew the schedule change. Brenner knew the isolation. Brenner knew that fear would do the heavy lifting and punctuality would do the rest. "Who adjusted the schedule?" Saul asked quietly. Eddie swallowed. "Brenner said the producer handled it. He said the producer could make call times move like chess pieces." Barton Klein. My stomach tightened. Not from surprise, but from the satisfaction of a pattern becoming a net. I nodded once. "All right, Eddie. Here is your price. You give us the diagrams, and anything you kept. You give us a written statement. In exchange, we tell Wolfe you cooperated. And Wolfe will tell Kramer. That will not make you innocent, but it will make you useful." Eddie's face worked. "Brenner will come back. Then you will be protected," I said. Hoping it was true enough to function, Saul added. "And, if he does not come back, you will still have the satisfaction of seeing him pay." Eddie looked at his clean workbench, at the neat tools, at the swept floor. A man can only keep things tidy for so long before the world tracks mud in. He went to a cabinet, unlocked it, and pulled out a flat folder. He tossed it onto the bench. "Diagrams," he said. He drew the linkages. He measured the seat rails. He wrote the latch points. He knew exactly what he wanted. I opened the folder carefully. Inside were sketches, measurements, and a typed sheet with step-by-step instructions. The typing looked familiar, the spacing and rhythm like a voice I had heard in threats. There was also a handwritten note in the margin. Quick and sharp press call moved to 7. He will be alone. That single sentence smelled like murder. I closed the folder and looked at Eddie. You just bought yourself 5 minutes that might save your life. He did not look grateful. He looked tired. Back in the car, Saul said. Wolfe already suspected the haunting's goal. Behavioral control, I agreed. The cab was the leash, and the death, Saul said. Acquired a second act, I replied. Someone who knew the dressing room routine and could slip poison into a harmless drink. Someone punctual, someone with access, someone who could move schedules. I saw Wolfe in his office, calm as a man arranging flowers while the city burned. He would like this folder. It was paper with teeth. When we reached the brownstone, I carried it inside like a verdict. Wolfe looked up as I entered, eyes sharp and patient. I put the folder on his desk and said, The mechanic talked. Fear works on craftsmen too, especially when the customer stops paying. Wolfe's gaze dropped to the typed instructions, and I saw that faint lock smile start again. Excellent, Wolfe said softly. Now we will see who pays the final price. Chapter 10. The unmasking at the brownstone. Wolfe dislikes crowds in his house the way he dislikes bad cooking, not because he cannot endure them, but because he resents the assumption that he should. Still, by 6 o'clock that evening, the ground floor of the brownstone on West 35th looked like a reception for nervous people who had misread the invitation. Fritz had arranged chairs with the grim efficiency of a man setting a table for a meal he does not personally approve. Theodore stayed upstairs with the orchids, which was wise. Orchids do not lie, but they also do not testify. And Theodore has an allergy to commotion. In the office, Nero Wolfe sat behind his desk, with the typed notes aligned neatly, the mechanic's folder placed squarely beside them, and the canvas money bag positioned as if it were an exhibit in a museum devoted to stupidity. I sat at my usual place with my notebook, and Inspector Kramer stood near the door pretending he was not impressed by anything in the room. The guests arrived in clumps. Barton Klein came first, broad, polished, offended by the very concept that he might be questioned in someone else's house. Silas Vane followed, thin and sharp, carrying his contempt like a prop. Marjorie Dax entered with her chin up and her eyes bright, as if she had decided that fear would not be allowed to smear her makeup. Yvonne Pike, the stage manager, looked as if she had brought the entire theatre timetable in her head and was prepared to use it as a weapon. Kenny Laird, Leo's dresser, stood near the wall with the strained stillness of a man who wished he had called in sick. Lila Brand hovered near the back, trying to disappear while failing at it, which is a common Broadway skill. Calvin Strake arrived precisely on time, smiled politely at Fritz, and sat in the red leather chair as if it had been warmed for him. His hands remained soft and clean, folded neatly, rented sin displayed as good manners. T.D. Maas, the mechanic, came last with Saul Panzer. Eddie looked like a man who had agreed to visit a lion's den because the alternative was a kennel full of police. His hands were rough, his posture wary, and his eyes kept darting to Strake as if Strake were the one who could truly harm him. When they were all settled, Wolfe regarded them without warmth. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "you are here because Leo Ransom is dead, and because several of you have attempted to make his death convenient. It is not." Klein snorted. "This is a circus." Wolfe's gaze shifted to him. "It is indeed a circus, Mr. Klein. You helped build the tent. Please refrain from complaining about the elephants." Kramer cleared his throat. "Wolfe, get to it." Wolfe ignored him, which is his favorite way of responding to authority. He looked at the group. "The driverless cab was the hook," Wolfe said. "A manufactured omen. Its purpose was not murder. It was behavioral control. A man who believes he is hunted becomes predictable. He arrives early, avoids crowds, trusts no one, and obeys instructions that appear to keep him safe." Silas Vane's lip curled. You are saying he frightened himself to death? No, Wolfe said. I am saying he was trained. There is a difference. Superstition is a tool when wielded by logistics. Wolfe gestured toward the money bag. Mr. Ransom was meant to be herded into possession of this money. That would have made him appear guilty of theft or bribery, and would have placed him under control. The cab was merely a leash, rented by the hour. Strake's smile held, colorful language. Wolfe looked at him. You prefer interest rates? Strake's eyes hardened slightly, but he said nothing. Wolfe continued. The scheme required repetition. It required Mr. Ransom to do the same thing the same way. It succeeded. On opening night he arrived early, alone, shaking. That was not random. It was engineered. Yvonne Pike stiffened. Barton Klein changed the call time. That is on the board. Klein snapped. Because we had investors press, you think I wanted him dead? Wolfe nodded once. I do not think you wanted him dead, Mr. Klein. I think you wanted him compliant and profitable. You were persuaded to move the call time, and you initialed it because you enjoy moving people like chess pieces. Klein's face reddened. Who persuaded me? Wolfe did not answer yet. He turned his eyes to Eddie Maas. Mr. Maas, Wolfe said. You built Brenner's rigging and the duplicate parts that matched the mechanism Hank assembled at Hollis Auto. Eddie swallowed. I assembled it. From designs provided by Rolf Brenner, Wolfe said. Eddie's eyes flicked toward Strake and then away. Yes, Wolfe's voice stayed calm, and the purpose was to frighten Mr. Ransom into obedience, to make him deliver money, to make him follow instructions. Yes, Eddie said, more firmly now. Spook him, herd him, that was it. Wolfe nodded. The death, therefore, required a second act, someone inside the theater's daily machinery. Someone who did not need to be brave, only punctual. Someone who knew the dressing room routine and could introduce poison into a harmless drink without a struggle. Marjorie Dax's voice was tight. You mean the water? Wolfe lifted a hand. Yes, the glass that did not taste like water. Mr. Ransom remarked on the taste. He was already frightened. He drank anyway, because fear makes a man cling to what seems familiar, even when it is wrong. Silas Vane leaned forward. You are accusing one of us. Wolfe's eyes remained steady. I am identifying one of you, Kramer barked. Name him, Wolfe. Wolfe's gaze moved slowly across the group and stopped on Kenny Laird, the dresser, who had slipped into the room without ceremony and had been standing near the wall as if he hoped the wallpaper might adopt him. Kenny's face went pale. Why are you looking at me? Wolfe's voice was almost gentle. Because you are trusted. Because you had access. Because you were punctual. Kenny shook his head quickly. I found him. I raised the alarm. Yes, Wolfe said, and you adjusted him before you raised it. The room tightened. People held their breath, the way they do when the curtain is about to rise, and the stage is still dark. Kenny stammered. I did not touch him. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. You did? Not out of cruelty. Out of habit. You straighten collars. You smooth ties. You arrange a man to look correct. Mr. Ransom was found dressed too perfectly for a man who had collapsed in fear. His costume was aligned, as if prepared for a photograph. That is the hand of a dresser. Kenny's mouth opened and closed. No sound came. Wolfe continued. You also knew he would be alone early. You knew because you helped ensure it. The anonymous phone message at 7:18 telling him to come early came from the corridor phone outside the dressing rooms, and the front desk clerk identified your voice. When Inspector Kramer asked who had used it, you can speak calmly when you choose. You spend your days listening to calm voices and copying them. Yvonne Pike's eyes widened. That message came through the front desk. Wolfe nodded. Indeed, and you, Mr. Laird, had reason to place it. You needed him isolated. You needed time. Kenny's eyes darted to Klein, to Vane, to Marjorie, then to Strake. The dart to Strake was the one that mattered. It was the glance of a debtor toward a collector. Wolfe's gaze followed it. Mr. Laird is drowning in personal debt. Gambling, rent, borrowed favors. He was approached by men who sell pressure, Mr. Strake did not build the cab. His hands are too soft. He paid for it. He recruited those who could tighten the leash. Strake's smile thinned. This is absurd. Wolfe's voice sharpened slightly. Is it Mr. Strake knew details of the cab route that were not public? That knowledge came from involvement, not rumor. And Mr. Mars has produced typed instructions tied to Mr. Brenner's scheme, including a note about the call time being moved. Mr. Laird benefited from that move by gaining access to an isolated man. Kramer stepped forward. Kenny, you want to start talking now? Kenny's face crumpled. I did not mean to kill him. That was it. The confession slipped out not as a speech, but as a leak. Marjorie Dax made a small sound, half disgust and half grief. Silas Vane stared as if he had discovered his show had always been a fraud. Lila Brand's hands went to her mouth. Wolfe watched Kenny without triumph. Wolfe never looks triumphant. He looks correct. Kenny's voice shook. They said it was a lesson. They said he would get scared and pay. They said he would deliver the money and it would be over. They said I just had to make sure he came early and stayed quiet. Wolfe nodded once, and when he threatened to go public, Kenny swallowed hard. He told me he was going to talk. He said he was done being pushed. Brenner said if Leo talked, everything fell apart. He said I had to stop him. Kramer's face darkened. You poisoned him. Kenny's eyes filled. I put something in the water, just a little. Brenner gave it to me. Said it would look like a faint, like nerves. He said the doctor would call it stress. I did not think he would die. Wolfe's voice was cold now, but you did it. Kenny's shoulders sagged. Yes. Kramer moved. 2 steps. A hand on Kenny's arm. The sound of handcuffs clicking is one of the few sounds that can silence a room full of theater people. As Kramer led Kenny out, Klein surged to his feet. Strake, Brenner, you used my theater. Strake rose too, smoothing his jacket. But the smoothness looked strained now. Mr. Klein, you used people long before I entered your orbit. Wolfe lifted a hand, bored by their moral debate. Enough, Mr. Strake. Inspector Kramer will have further questions for you. And by now he has men on their way to collect Mr. Brenner from his garage or his warehouse, whichever door he reaches first. Mr. Klein, you may continue profiting from your talent, provided you learn the cost of treating human beings as merchandise. Mr. Vane, Miss Dax, Miss Pike, Miss Brand, you may go. Try to remember that schedules can kill when the wrong man writes them. They left in uneven waves, some angry, some shaken, some relieved to escape the brownstone's quiet certainty. When the office finally emptied except for me and Wolfe, Fritz appeared with a tray and the look of a man who has heard enough ugliness for one day and intends to correct it with food. Wolfe watched the door close, then looked at me. You see, Archie, he said, almost mildly, superstition did not kill Leo Ransom. Logistics did, wearing a mask, charging interest. I sat back and let that settle. Outside, New York kept moving, indifferent and busy, a city that never misses a cue even when a man does. I said, Broadway will replace him. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Of course, the theater is merciless. That is why it is so useful to criminals. Fritz cleared his throat politely. Dinner is served. Wolfe's eyes softened the smallest amount, which on him counts as comfort. He rose with effort, like a large bear deciding the world, had finally offered something worthwhile. As he moved toward the dining room, I glanced once at the empty red leather chair and thought of Leo Ransom sitting in mirror light, waiting for a curtain call that never came. The monster had not been a ghost. It had been a timetable,